Analytics with Nags. In this video, I'm going to discuss about Power BI modeling. And as I mentioned here, this is the part 1 of Power BI modeling, where I'm going to discuss about Star Schema, reduce model size, and date dimension. And for your information, I have already talked about or discussed each and every topic in individual video, but together I want to combine it in the part 1 of modeling because these are very essential part of modeling. So if you already aware of these topics, you can skip this video. For those who are newly into this channel, you continue watching it. It will definitely benefit you. If you are new to this channel, hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon for notification. Let's begin. So first things first, why we need a star schema? Let's try to understand this scenario here. This is the typical sales table where you have a receipt number and which location and different customers are available. I mean, which customer has purchased it and what products he has brought and item quantity, everything together, right? You can see this particular customer, he has purchased in Chennai and his information is repeated here, Naga and his customer GS number, customer mobile number and customer email, right? So the information is repeated if you maintain the data is like this. So this is not an effective way. Once you store the data in a data warehouse, if you get the data like this, then it will be huge, the storage will be huge, and moreover this is not a proper design. Even in your source system you will not have this kind of design, but sometimes if the data design is like this, then you need to properly redesign it. And moreover, in your system, the business process system is called OLTP system, which is optimized for transaction processing. So it will be like more normalized version of it. So instead of customer name, they will create customer ID, then they create a table over there. It is called a normalization, the process of avoiding duplication, right? So that is what a normalization. So they will design it like this, but when you get a data like this, then it will be very difficult to handle it. So what are the disadvantages? Your data is repeated. When memory consuming in Power BI or in data warehouse it will be impacted, then obviously it will hit your performance. So what is the proper design? So star schema is the answer. Is the mature modeling approach widely adopted by relational data warehouse. Okay, that is the concept behind the star schema. While see this kind of data or transactional data in OLTP system, you can design it anyway, but when it comes to reporting, it should be very quickly responding. So in that case, you need to design it in a star schema. The ultimate aim of star schema is to build dimensions and fact. So how to build it? You can see it here. So from this particular table or single table, or we can call it as a flat table, you need to convert into star schema, meaning like whatever your numerical quantity, whatever your the quantity, what I can say is what you want to analyze is your fact table. Like I want to analyze item price, quantity, tax amount, discount amount, all these things are I want to analyze. That should be stored in your fact table along with the foreign key references of the dimension table. So what is your dimension table by which you want to analyze these facts? I want to analyze item price by product, by date, by customer. Okay, so this becomes your dimension. So the same table you divide or you create a subtables. We need to call it as dimension tables. For the information related to product, you can see the blue information, columns with the blue are related to product, so we need to create a product table. Information with the customer, the light blue, should be in the customer table or customer dimension. Then your date becomes your date dimension. The remaining things, whichever the numerical quantity are unwanted columns, you need to remove it from the fact, either in the dimensions. Okay, so the fact table is simple. It contains some measures along with the reference to your dimension tables. So once you do this, then your design becomes very simple. This is the first step towards your modeling. Your ultimate aim towards modeling is to build a star schema. For that, what are the steps you need to enable is like you need to do a proper reduction of the modeling. That is our next part of this session. Like, to begin with, how to create a date dimension. So date dimension should have met these properties. It must have a column of type date. It should have a date type. Then date column must be unique. It should not have duplications, as the dimension itself meaning like no duplicates. So to add one more point, so as you can see, like this information from here, as in the previous example, the Chennai Naga, right? So this will be stored only once in the customer table. The Naga will be stored only once in the customer table. So all the dimension values are unique, and it will have multiple entries in your fact table. The entry that he purchased first record, and after some time he has purchased second record, only reference only the name or the customer IDs here. Here it will have his name, GST number, everything. The repeated information attributes are stored. That is what. Similarly, a date dimension should be unique and non-blank. The date column must not have any missing dates. This is another important factor. And date table must be marked as date table. It should be marked as date table. How to create? You have different options. If you are directly creating in Power BI, then you can use a Power Query, or if you are from the source table itself, you have date, then use a Power Query to connect. That is, from a Power BI you can able to connect directly to the source, or you can generate using Power Query or generate using Nags. You have different options. I already made a video on this. You can check it out about how to create a date table and dimension table. And a performance improvement checklist. This is another important topic I have already covered. So just I will quickly walk through it. So you once you have decided star schema, and there are certain columns that is not necessary for your analysis, don't bring those. And even you can restrict to certain rows, because your analysis requires only 5 years data. Don't bring more than 5 years. In your source you might have 10 to 12 years, so filter those rows as well, right? This is what remove unnecessary columns or rows. Then aggregations and group by I've explained pretty much well in these videos. You can watch it. Basically, like instead of you are storing the data at the product level, you can group by product category if your analysis is restricted only to product category. Another example is like if you have a data at the date level, you can aggregate to the month level. So grouping will reduce the model size. This is another important factor. Then optimize the column data types. You can see the receipt number contains a prefix. You can remove those so that only numerical values will be stored. That is how you can reduce it. Disable the Power Query query load. This I will explain it while I am doing a demo in this video. And another factor is like disable auto date time. See, this is very important. Like you in your source or in your model, you have many date tables, date columns, and once you enable it, all the date columns will create its own table. For each date column it creates the own table, right? So that it will have a huge storage. So once you disable it and create a date dimension that we have seen in the previous step, then you can disable it and link to the respective date columns in your fact. That is how you can improve the performance. So these three steps, like you need to design a star schema, date column, and performance improvement factor, is the first step towards your modeling. Let's try to understand with one of the examples in this video. Like I'm going to walk you through with some applications. Like it is like some people applying for a job. So this is like application ID. For each application that candidate applies, one ID is generated. And what is the qualification of this candidate and application medium. So this contains every information related to the application, and some of the information like candidate, gender, previous company, application medium, I mean till this it's a candidate information. Then something like vacancy ID, vacancy name, vacancy start date, this is related to vacancy, what position they are applying for. So these are two different dimension, and when he applied is a created date, this is the date dimension. So this particular data set, how we can create a star schema with creating a proper date table, and also we will try to add some of the performance improvement factors as well. Let's jump into a demo. Now we are in Power BI. First things are first, let's try to create the date table first. I have a script here, as I mentioned before. You can able to create the script. I mean, you can create using Power Query or DAX. Today I will go for Power Query. First step, what I'm trying to do here is using the data. I mean to say like using a Power Query, I'm creating a date table. For that, I went to Power Query, new source and blank query, and just paste the query over here. And here few things to note. Here I populated the date table from 2018 till 10 years. Okay, so it will have a 10 years of data. Once you click on it, you will get the date table here. This is ready now. So let us name it as dim date. Now once we bring in the fact table into our Power BI, then we will do some of the performance. First we need to decide on what are the different dimensions from this list. Let's go back to Excel. Now we can see here these three. Let us try to color different combination for different dimensions. These three, like qualification, candidate, gender, are related to our candidate. Okay, let us put it in light green. Then the previous company, even the previous company is related to candidate. The vacancy ID, vacancy name, vacancy start date, end date, these four belongs to the job application, or I mean what is a post. So this can be considered as another dimension. Date, created date, is related to application. When it is application date is created, so that becomes your key to the date dimension. So this becomes another dimension. So let us put it as light blue. Now remaining things over here, right? Last date for application, I mean rejected reason, application duration. See, this is something I have added for your understanding to remove some of the unwanted columns. So in this example, we classify it as one is customer, I mean candidate is one dimension, date is another dimension, vacancy is another dimension. There are three dimensions to it. Then if we want, we can also create the application status as another dimension, right? Or we can leave it as such, because see, usually in proper designing we need to create individual like individual categorical values in a proper dimension. But for now I will leave it as such. I'm not creating a dedicated dimension for it. Now remaining things, application ID, medium, application status, last date, rejected reason, application duration, right? These becomes your fact table rows. So let us try to import this table here. We have imported, and I do not want this application medium because all the application are through company portal, so this column doesn't make any sense to me. I can remove it. Similarly, application duration is nothing but how much time candidate taken to enter into that spent in the portal to enter the details. This is also not relevant to me. right? So these are some of the columns I can remove it. This is some of the performance improvement. Either I can remove it from here, or after uploading I can remove it from here. So moving columns, all other things. Let's try to bring in our Excel file, that is our application data. Where it is, I have a path, let me put it here. This is the application data. Let me bring in here so now we have brought this data set. Let us try to rename it as fact application. So what we can do is, like, we need to create a dimension from this, right? So typically if you are from a SQL background, you can do everything in SQL. That is pretty much good. That is what I recommend. But if you are not, in your organization you're not using any SQL, then this is the way. You have a fact application, then do the duplicate of this query. And before duplicate, let's try to remove the unwanted columns as one of the performance factors. So as I said before, application medium is not required, I will remove those, and also application duration is not required, I will remove that column as well. Then you can do the duplicate. We are going to create the candidate dimension, so you can see dim candidate. Then what we can do is, except this candidate and gender, I do not want any of the columns, so you can say remove other columns. Then this candidate is derived from the fact, right? You need to press the remove duplicates. This is essential step because you are multiple times the same candidate can apply to different jobs, so you are copying from the fact, so you need to remove the duplicates. Then go to fact, then duplicate again. In this time what we are going to do, we are going to do the vacancy dimension. So vacancy dimension, where it is here. We have copied here dim vacancy. Okay, dim vacancy. Then what we can do, choose only what you want. These 4 columns I need it. Just choose remove other columns. Then as usual we press remove duplicates. So this is what very important in Star Schema. You can see here, these are the different vacancies or positions available. You have only 9 positions. For these 9 positions you need to maintain only 9 records, whereas here assume there are 1 million people applied for this role. So these records, 9 records, instead of maintaining 9 records, you maintain 9 million, I mean 1 million times, right? That is what a powerful Star Schema is. So now once you created the related dimension, as we said, only 3 dimensions we have. One is candidate, vacancy and date. We already created date dimension and candidate and vacancy. Now next, moving to your unnecessary columns removal. So already we removed some of them. Now once we have a candidate, there is no need of your candidate informations over here. You need only the candidate ID. So just go to the fact table and remove vacancy name, vacancy start date, vacancy end date. See, there are another factor over here. You can generate the surrogate key, like creating index key for this. When you click on it, like create index column over here. Okay, that is pretty much not required. Once you have already have an integer value, there is no point in creating the index key for the surrogate, I mean already reference view a numerical value. This is another important thing. But if you have a textual columns, then that makes sense. In my case I have both are having a numerical value. I don't want to create a surrogate key for it. Okay, so this is fine. and there is no relationship created here, just you are creating just a reference. Now you can see your fact table is reduced to application ID, candidate ID when it is created, then application status. As I said before, we can also create one more dimension for it, but it's no point here. So that's it, we have created here. Then just close and apply. And another important factor I want to highlight here is like I want another table here, one more important factor that for performance improvement I mentioned block listed candidate. See, this is something important here. What it is saying is like already I told one of the performance improvement factor over here, that is disable power query load, meaning like I will come to this little later once I have see, this is another important factor like block listed candidate. What I'm trying to say, this is not required, but what it should enable me is like I need to block list whatever there are 25 candidates who are blocklisted. Those applications should not be reported. So how I get it? So I have loaded it here. Then I will go here and I will do the lookup, right? I will do the merge. Then whoever has a match, do not load it. That is what I will say. So blocklisted candidate, I will say blocklisted. Then you need to have left outer join. There is no inner join. You need to choose the left outer join because all the records should come from fact. If it exists, then that value should appear here. That is the left outer join. Now here I'll use a blocklisted person contact number. So there is no blocklisted for some of them. Now here is the catch. Now what I should get is it, I need to get null, meaning if I choose 453, this particular candidate is blocklisted. Okay, so those who are null is not blocklisted. So this is what I want. Now this particular table is required to filter the rows. Okay, so this particular table is not required for me further to the analysis in the Power BI. Okay, in those cases I am saying include in report refresh. I will uncheck it. Even I will say enable load. I will uncheck it, right? So this is what I meant in the one of the performance step. So we are all done. We have removed the unnecessary columns. We have created the date dimension, and we have unchecked the unwanted columns as well. Then we are good to create. And let's close and apply. Okay, there you go. Now you can see already it has created some of the calculations here, and we can able to relate the table here using the created date. That's it. So this is typically looking like a star schema, your fact, and surrounded by different dimensions. From there on you can create your own report. This is how we need to properly design your model. And one last step about that settings, that date dimension, like you need to set it as date table, mark as date table. Now before setting it, let us try to see it. Like now you can see here fact table, you have a last date created. Okay, this is considered as a date hierarchy, whereas created date is linked to dim date, so date hierarchy will appear here. So right click and mark as date table, then select the column. This is your date column, validated successfully. Then there you go. This is the first step you need to do. And then another option, as I said, data source settings, not data source settings, options, sorry, bear with me. Option settings, options, and if you can set it this option globally or for only for this particular file alone. So this is for current file. I'm setting auto date time to uncheck it. Now you can see the last date time also disappeared. Earlier last date for application had the auto date time, meaning like it has its own hierarchy created. Once you disable it, the particular table won't be created. So I hope you understand the core concept behind modeling. This is how you need to follow star schema, date dimension, and the performance improvement factors as we discussed in these slides. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button and comment below for queries. Do remember that data is your asset. Wait for my next modeling video in part 2.